Pulling everything back together after the big lunch break, and I heard lots of really interesting conversations. I'm delighted to see how many young people are here for this session. We're going to be looking at how do you get FGM and early childhood early enforced and child marriage onto the agenda. A lot of this will be about building political support, sharing ideas. You're going to be also invited to share your ideas and talk about the work that you do. We've got a really mixed panel, mixed experiences. We've got everything from filmmakers to field activists, people working with government, coalition buildings. We've got lots and lots of knowledge in the room. That comes with one small problem, which is that everybody is going to have lots of questions and lots to exchange. Please excuse me if I come in and cut you off while you're speaking. It is not because we don't want to hear everything you have to say, but simply we're very tight for time, as I'm sure you've seen in this morning's sessions. We are going to have a talk later on, I believe, from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health from Nigeria. But he needs another minute to get here, so we're going to get straight into the panel. We're going to break that off when he shows up, have our opening speech, and then go back into it. We're going to first start. We have Margaret here. Margaret Kibasa is with the Children's Dignity Forum. When she was 12, she was forced into a marriage. She had her first child when she was 13, but she managed to escape the marriage. And she has quite an amazing story, actually. She joined a girls' club within the Children's Dignity Forum and has gone on to learn a lot about what her rights are, what the effects of FGM are, and has then turned that knowledge around to become a peer educator herself. She has now got, I think she works with more than 100 girls are involved in the program that she now runs. She's the chairperson of the Tunawiza Girls Network. So we're going to ask her to tell us a little bit about what it is that she does. Margaret.
Et donc, je lui cède la parole maintenant.
My name is Margaret Kibasa, and I'm from Tarime. My name is Margaret Kibasa. I'm from Tanzania. I'm 19 years old. I have 2 children. I gave birth to my first child when I was 13, and the second one when I was 15. I'm the chair of the Party for the Women, called CDF, and started working with forced marriage and FGM and child marriage. Women from different parts of my region did some research to find out between their peers who have the same kind of challenges that they do concerning FGM and child marriage. After this research, we learned to take some pictures. And these pictures were exhibited to show the life of women and girls in our community. After this research and pictures taking, we started a women's club, and we're able to campaign to help protect girls and women against FGM and child marriage. As the chair, my responsibilities are to give the women in my network different information and to ensure that the work of our network is known to the community. We give information about FGM and child marriage. We have been collaborating with the leaders of the village and also to be able to save the women and the children. At the same time, we collaborate with different government organizations, the police, when women come into these problems. The gains that we've received from informing the community, we've been able to educate more than 1,000 girls who are in the risk zone for FGM and child marriage. At the same time, 150 women run away from their homes to be able to get away from FGM and child marriage. We were able to help these women and give them information about economics so that they can know their own businesses to help themselves and their families. Our goals, we would like to continue to collaborate with the community to be able to continue our work to help women and children. We would like to add more clubs for women and children and to campaign in schools, from door to door, again, to be able to continue to help women deal with FGM and child marriage. Thank you for listening to me.
Merci beaucoup, Marie.
Questions at the end, but now we're going to return to our opening speech. We have Linus Awute from Nigeria. He's the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health. Thank you for being here today. Here, you could use my microphone.
First of all, I want to thank the UK government and UNICEF, DFID, for hosting this summit. As a Nigerian representative, we are here to communicate our own excitement to the organizers of this summit and to the spirit of this summit, because it is happening at a time and moment when it is most needed. Talking about genital mutilation, early marriage, and all of that. I think this is a widespread practice in Nigeria. And of course, the issue of the girl's right has become a very thoroughly discussed matter in Nigeria. You are all aware, at the last plenary, Malala made it clear her own position and in fact what she saw of the Nigerian girl and the reason why she had to visit Nigeria last week, whereby she was made to also see evidently clear that yes, the right of the girl is at stake and nothing can be better than this type of summit, more so when it is happening now. We are also here to underscore the value of this summit, seeking to, carry the message home and to also ensure that the momentum that is generated in the course of this very summit is also transmitted into reality by advancing our vision and then focus on the various program elements that we have generated that is designed to outlaw this type of practice forever. We believe very strongly that globally there have been conventions and declarations that country must have to transmit into reality by ratifying them in the first place, and by also developing program implementation strategies that will constitute the template for active program implementation that will, at the end of the day, procure result for us. A lot of monies have been put into the various programs that are designed to address these ugly phenomena. But we need to also create a condition for mutual accountability that will also recognize all stakeholders making prescription for what assignment each stakeholder must undertake. In Nigeria, we have moved it to a level whereby compacts are being signed by stakeholders who must have to take responsibility on what must or must not happen with regards to the issue of early marriage and forced marriage, and then female genital mutilation. I bring you hope, too, that, yes, undermining of the rights of the girl has taken a new dimension, whereby some miscreants, in the name of religious fundamentalism, have chosen to not to just mutilate the female genitals or forcing them into early marriage, but depriving them from even going to school, depriving them from fitting into life. And this is also being fought. And Malala has rendered her voice, and in a very clear terms, she has said that that action cannot be linked to any religion on earth, because even the religion of Islam, forbids what is going on. And so we are now at the comfort zone to do what is needful to eliminate this ugly practice forever and ever. Thank you very much. And I want to welcome all of you to this program.
Thank you very much, Minister. Policymakers. And we had a really interesting conversation yesterday. Albino Francisco is with the National Coalition to End Child Marriage in Mozambique. Now, he actually has a really interesting story because he has really good news, which is that creating pressure and working together is starting to see results. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his own story, and I hope that it'll be helpful for people in the room who are trying to ask, or what are the tools, how do we do this, how do we get the conversation going, and how do we keep it going after meetings like this one?
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the British government, UNICEF, and the FID for this opportunity. I would like to share our experience in Mozambique. I representing the National Coalition to End Child Marriage. It's a civil society platform that brings together national and international NGOs interested in the fight child marriage in Mozambique. Mozambique is one of the world's highest rates of child marriage. We talk about 48%. That girls between 20 and 24 years marry under 18, and at least 14% marry under 15. According to the DHS 2011, the last DHS in Mozambique. We have a very big challenge to address child marriage in Mozambique, but in the last 2 years, we working together with our partners, development partners, and other international and national NGOs to put more pressure into the government to design and approve a national strategy to prevent and eliminate child marriage. We have some activities related to the evidence-based advocacy. We conduct in the last months a comprehensive study to analyze better the data from DHS 2011 to understand the main reasons behind child marriage prevalence, child marriage and teenage pregnancy in Mozambique. We're working at political level to influence policies and programs in national level, including in terms of legislative legal framework. Our coalition works to influence the revision of the penal code approved by the parliament in this month. And we are very happy because many of our contributions including in this penal code. The government assumed their responsibility to design and approve the national strategy to combat child marriage. And I know that we'll launch in the end of this month the national campaign to fight against child marriage. This campaign is linked with the African Union campaign and will involve different stakeholders at national and local level. In terms of next steps, as a coalition, we will work very close with the government, of the Minister of Women and Social Action, to design this national strategy. And we will involve in the implementation of this national campaign at national and local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please hold on to your questions. There will be time at the end. I'm sure that lots of you will have questions about how that momentum was created. We're going to move now, going further into policy and policy making. Elise, Petitpas is with the End FGM European campaign, part of Amnesty International. Now, she monitors developments in European institutions on gender-based violence and FGM. The End FGM European campaign aims to place FGM high on the EU agenda, and it provides, also her group provides a platform for partner NGOs to exchange good practices and build their capacities to advocate change at the EU level.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the invitation. Yeah, the microphone is working now. So, the NFGM European campaign, led by Amnesty International, started in 2009 with one main objective, and it was to make sure that female genital mutilation would become a priority for the European Union. We are today in 2014, and the European Union has an action plan looking at how we can work on female genital mutilation both within the European Union and outside the European Union. There is now the issue integrated into many European Union legal instruments and like policy instruments, legislative instruments, and the EU member states, including the UK, have taken political commitments to act on FGM at national level, at European level, and at international level. How did we get there? The NFGM European campaign managed to get the European Union to prioritize FGM thanks to an approach that combines strategic advocacy and active campaigning, as you can see from the slide. And I won't go into the details of our various pieces of work. I can let that for the discussions. But I would rather like to highlight 4 elements that were key to our success and 2 main challenges that we met. The first lesson learned can be summed up in 3 key words: reputation, expertise, and experience. The campaign benefited from Amnesty International branding and name, of course. But most of all, and it was important to be clear about our message, most of all, the campaign benefited from the experience and expertise of its partners in Europe working in the field on FGM, and also of several activists, and including FGM survivors. With these actors, and this is the second key for success, with these actors, we were able to define a clear message. And from the outset of the campaign, it was important for us to be clear about our demands. We want the EU to develop a strategy on FGM. This is clear. And it was also important for us to be clear about the ultimate change that we wanted to in the life of women and girls. The third lesson learned is about mobilization, and you know about it. And indeed, the strength of our message was linked to our ability to mobilize different actors on our demands. And we were able to work with the same message with decision makers, with activists, with artists as well in the Art for Action project, but also with the public, with a petition that we launched during the 16 days of activism during gender-based violence, for example. Then the fourth key of our success was about flexibility. Flexibility we had to be flexible because, you need to be able to respond to any type of changing environment. And for example, the economic crisis had a huge impact on the violence against women sector in Europe. And so we had to make sure we could work, within that context with our partner organizations who had to struggle with the effect of the economic crisis as well. Then the challenges that we faced. And the first challenge is linked to this flexibility element that I've just described. And it is about the issue of funding for NGOs based in Europe. Funds to work on female genital mutilation in Europe are very limited, as you can see also from the limited number of NGOs, like European NGOs, that were able to attend the summit today. And yet, there is a need to work with the diaspora which are in Europe if we want to be serious about a global response to FGM. The second challenge that we met was about our campaign being a European-wide campaign. And the geographical distance was certainly problematic when we had to deal with the issue of supporting individual activists, for example, or supporting national advocacy actions. And this is why, again, resources are needed. To conclude now, despite several challenges, we definitely managed to build a European movement on FGM. And I'm happy to announce that in May this year, we created a European network, the FGM European Network, which was created to embody this European movement. And one of the biggest tasks for the network will be to ensure that the political commitments to work on FGM in Europe are actually implemented. And this at all levels with the long-term visions and, most importantly, in respect of the principles of a human rights-based approach, because it's really necessary to create an accountability framework. And so by implementation here, I mean to ensure that the actors that do have the expertise on FGM in Europe are able to carry out this work. And the member of the FGM European Network concentrates a wealth of expertise and knowledge on how to work on FGM in Europe, but also externally. And this is why resources are needed for them. And by implementation, I also mean ensuring that decision and policy makers set the legislative and policy framework to work on FGM in Europe. And we believe, as Amnesty, but also with the partners of this FGM European network that we've created, we believe that a first step, because we're talking about an accountability framework, the first step should be for all state parties to the Council of Europe, and the UK in particular, to ratify the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women. This convention is the most progressive instrument in Europe to deal with all aspects of violence against women, including FGM, including child marriage. And it will enter into force on the 1st of August. And that's why we need mobilization from the public as well, saying we want our rights to be defended, but also from the decision makers. It will enter into force on the 1st of August. And ratifying and implementing is the least that the UK and the EU member states can do if they want to be serious about tackling FGM and child marriage and all forms of violence against women, actually, in Europe and worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to close out the introductory discussion with a presentation from two people who have such an interesting story. They work together. Lisa Zimmerman is a teacher at the City Academy in Bristol. She founded Integrate Bristol in 2008. She was frustrated with the lack of effective policy and action on gender inequality, FGM, and gender-based violence. And Naz Ahmed is actually a student, and they work together within Integrate Bristol. They have a trailer that they've put together. Actually, I should also tell you that Naz, in addition to being a student, is a rapper on Buckle Up and Use Your Head, which some of you will have seen this video over the course of the last few days or maybe at the weekend. They're going to show us a trailer. This is the trailer from Use Your Head. Is that right?
How dare you come back? You left us.
I have left because what you have done to Yasmin.
I know what you want to do to my sister. Look at her, how could you?
It's not in Quran. It's not legal. Do you want to go to jail?
a lot of Somali women, they don't know about the law.
Anyone who is in any way involved are liable to up to 14 years imprisonment.
Exploring all the areas of evidence in Islamic law, there is no hadith that support the practice of FGM.
So what will she do?
Maybe Lisa and Naz could tell us a little bit about their work and how they're using projects like this to create pressure and keep FGM and early child marriage on the agenda.
Okay, so I started Integrate Bristol in 2008, so 6 years ago, with 4 girls who basically wanted to start talking about this, at that time, extremely taboo issue. And we've since grown to a group of well over 100 young people, including many boys. I think it's around 140 in the group now. And they are really brave, outspoken, articulate. But it didn't happen overnight. It was slow in the beginning, then it grew, then it exploded. And all the work was rooted in principles of education and empowerment, but with creative sides. The young people took the messages home, and the attitudes in the communities began to change.
It was always us, the young people, who decided what we wanted to do. In 2008, the first 4 girls wanted to discuss the issue through poetry. Even poems seemed scary back then. FGM was totally taboo. We hadn't discussed it with our mothers. Then 13 of us made a drama documentary for radio called Why. It was really great. The radio allowed privacy, and the creative part, the drama, allowed us to express our views from a distance.
And what you've just seen is a trailer from the film they made the next year called Silent Scream, and that was pretty groundbreaking in its time. And then the number had grown to 27 girls. And that resource won many awards, and it is used internationally as an educational resource, even by the midwifery group, I believe. I think the reason it worked is because the girls were in charge. They went at the pace that they wanted to go. We were still just girls at that time, but it was also exciting. Making a film is exciting, and they were learning new skills that were transferable. They could apply those to their other learning.
But there were hard times too. Just before the premiere of Silent Scream, we had a horrible backlash that was led by a woman who worked at the school. If it hadn't been for the support of our mothers, Avon and Somerset Police, she might have stopped us. The woman is now a local councillor. You can imagine how we feel about that. It is so important that all political parties make ethical decisions about who they select rather than thinking about the votes.
And at that time, in 2012, TV and press really didn't want to go anywhere near the subject of FGM. At that screening of that film, we didn't have a single local elected representative in the audience, and we did send out loads of invitations. And just that's pretty amazing seeing where we are now with the summit. That's just 2 years on. It's incredible nationally and globally, the change that's happened. And after that film, when we won that battle, numbers jumped to 85, and we had to rethink our projects because it just didn't work anymore. So they organised a national conference at Bristol University and invited 300 delegates. And then shortly after that, they were on Newsnight, and I think that was a massive turning point. Suddenly, kids were out there stamping their feet and demanding a policy change to protect them from FGM.
So that was the Newsnight programme when Munna Hassan told David Cameron to grow a pair and deal with FGM, and yeah, I guess he did. On top of the creative work, we now focus on dissemination and really challenging policy. Our young trustee farmer Mohammed launched the Guardian-backed petition to Michael Gove. We got nearly 250,000 signatures in just a few weeks, and he found himself. Surrounded by 5 brown girls in headscarves wanted to talk about vaginas, and we've made 2 funny political music videos. We've also kept the fun, the creativity, and above all, the humour, but we're more aware, more political, and very loud. We'll talk about anywhere. We'll talk to anyone, anywhere.
There's been huge, almost unbelievable progress under this coalition, and we really, really do celebrate that, but we can't stop there. Statutory education in all schools, that means academies and free schools as well, is absolutely essential so that all young people have the chance to speak out, and that no school and no parent can opt out of education that's aimed at keeping a child safe all teachers, frontline professionals, and mandatory reporting with accountability. The current reporting systems are inadequate. People are always blaming the police for no prosecutions, but if the information they need to protect children or to achieve a prosecution isn't passed on, then nothing's going to happen. In the area where I live, for example, social services get 200 to 300 referrals a quarter and not one is passed on to the police, and that's not good enough. And we were going to show you that clip now, but you've already seen it, so...
Are we going to show the trailer?
No, it was just going to be the trailer.
Oh.
That was the film we were going to show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we have lots of different ideas for creating pressure. I'm going to come to your questions now. One thing that I would ask is that the questions and comments are specifically directed at creating knowledge that's useful to people in this room. So it isn't really a forum right now for large commentary and critique, but more about what it is that you can either ask them that they can offer you as tools or tools that you want to share yourselves. Please, here in the front row.
First, of course, I would like, I am from Iraq. I would like to say to John that appreciating the Wadi works in Iraq, especially in Kurdistan area about FGM. But of course, I would like also to note that the Kurdistan government has already, declared their banning of FGM in a law. So this is, they recognize that there is a phenomenon of the FGM in the Kurdistan area. And we have also to speak about South Kurdistan in Kirkuk, that you also did a good work on survey about the FGM in this city. And also I would like to speak about our work on the child marriages. And this is which is really the new phenomena in the country due to the chaos and due to the invasion of the Americans and the British after 2003. That's now it is increasing the phenomena of child marriages under 15 and outside of the court. We as NGOs organizations, women's organizations, for instance, in 2014, that the Justice Minister has, approved, or the Prime Minister's approved draft law on personal status law, what they call it Ja'fari personal status law. This is according to a sectarian law. And it is in contradictory to our personal status law, which is still valid. So we did really a campaign with the media. We did immediately, we recognized 8th of March is a day of mourning for Iraqi women. And this what we did, demonstrations, sit-in, and we did really make a focus on the public and as a political issue. It's not only a women issue, it is a political issue where we, after that, we could stop them. And that's also with the thanks to the International CEDAW Committee who has really supported us. So we still fight against this draft law and we will continue, and we feel that day is very important for us to get the international solidarity with us.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to pass it back to John Chua very briefly. Could you please not take photographs with John Chua in the... Yeah, thank you very much. What I'd like to ask you is about the tools that you use. You were telling me earlier before the talk started, and obviously the material that's being produced is useful for people, it's useful for education and creating pressure. For other people who might be interested in using media as a tool, where do they find partners, and what kinds of things would you tell them to focus on first if they've never done that before?
Well, WADI has this program where we train activists from all over the world, particularly Middle East and Asia, and we give them cameras, and they bring back to their own communities, they shoot material, and they send it to us, and we try to edit material together and give it to media like Guardian and BBC and so forth. Because we feel that professional journalists are not able to gather the kind of evidence that you see in this thing. If you can imagine someone flying from New York City to Iraq and walking to a village and to meeting a grandmother and trying to talk to her about this issue. It'll just never happen. You'll never get the video you want. So we train local people to do local things.
Okay, so you're really engaging the community in creating their own media and then using that in both.
That's right.
Okay.
That's has been our approach. But WADI actually does many different things. In Iraq, northern Iraq, we Kurdistan, we do clean water, women's shelter, radio station. It's a charity that does many different things. And we had been working there for many years before, since for 20 years now, more than 20 years, we've been working there. So we had gained the trust of the locals, basically. And when we went back 10 years ago, and we started to work on FGM 10 years ago, we had to regain their trust, and that was a good inside way to do research and work in the area. But I hope in other countries that we will be able to do that, to train the local people to approach the local situation and
Great,
and
thank you. So some interesting ideas there for using media. I'm going to actually come towards the back a little bit. I'm afraid we won't get to everybody's questions. Could you please let us know what your comment or question is?
Yes. My name is Katja Iversen. I am from Women Deliver, and we do, and not only babies, all of us. My question, we are an advocacy organization, and we work also very much on the public advocacy. What's your experiences with the language that we use? I think today has not been a bad day in terms of how we speak about our issues, but sometimes it is very lingo and technical. And when we want to speak to people who don't know about the issues in depth and very technical savvy on it, we have to be able to translate it. And talking about some of the issues can be pretty hard. For example, the inclusion of young people, you can use a long tirade of technical, but it's basically nothing about us without us. And it's also positioning these issues not as women's issues, but as development issues. But your experiences with working on good messaging that can get it out and beyond the usual suspects.
I think I'm going to pass that question to both our representative from Amnesty International and to the two of you working with Integrate Bristol. So you have very different experiences of using language. You're working a lot more in policy, but you talked about good branding. And the two of you are working in communities, actually working with parents and students. So perhaps, Elise, if you wanted to start.
So from our side, basically, our strategy was, first of all, to use the human rights language. So framing the issue of FGM as being an issue that concerns women's rights, and using the human rights framework to say that then women are entitled to empowerment, and trying then to transform, this human rights message that we had into an empowering message as well. And what we've done, so we had a petition in 2010, as I was telling you, and we really tried to, so it was a petition calling on Europe to develop a strategy on female genital mutilation, but also to give, with the message saying, women have the right to come here in Europe if they are fleeing this persecution. The women have the right also to get education, etc. And we really wanted to use the voices of those people who had asked the EU to do work on FGM into a positive way. So we asked the people to sign on like rose petals, and we promised the people that we will use those rose petals, when they put their voice and their message to the EU, and that we would, transform this into one message that would be put forward to the EU decision makers. And for that, we worked with artists. And those artists created art pieces out of those rose petals. I don't have pictures here with me, but I have in my bag. And for example, we had one artist who is based in Belgium, who is also a sculptor, and he did this big mouth, that was the representation of, women and old people speaking out against the practice. And it was a living sculpture. So we were able to present it in the Beaux-Arts, which is like a fine art pieces, like a place for fine art, in Brussels. And we also work with an artist who is based in Brazil and who does dresses out of condoms. She does a lot of work around HIV/AIDS, for example, and with condoms that we cannot sell. And we wanted also to work with her on our FGM project. And she also developed, dresses that were representing the woman and the girls and the fact that the girl can grow, etc. And so that was our way to come with a positive message on FGM and positive images as well, because they are really important when we talk about those issues.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to turn now to the two from Integrate Bristol, and if you could tell us a little bit about your experiences. What kind of language are you using, and how are you engaging people in the conversation?
Well, it would depend very much on who I'm talking with. When I'm working with young people, obviously, the first thing to do is listen. And if somebody was telling me that they'd been cut, I wouldn't argue with them and say, actually, that's the wrong word. I would, go with whatever vocabulary they used. But I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that young people can't handle it, aren't up to it, and actually they're far better at handling it than we are, and they're far more direct, and I have to say they get things done. The way they went after Michael Gove, the way they Moona spoke to David Cameron, they just say it as it is. And I think giving them a platform and letting them say what they say is actually very effective. I don't find language a problem. They tell me what to do far more than I. They lead everything. It is very much youth-led. There's two of them here. Do ask them.
Okay, great. We're going to move to another question. You have been waiting quite a few times. Here you go.
My name is Rana Nadi, and I'm from Egypt. And my question was, first of all, I want to thank everyone here. Great ways to get the message done. But my question was for the Nigerian minister. So is he here? Yes, here. Hello, how are you? Prime Minister. Well, pleased to meet you. My question is, because all of them have worked, they try to work without the government, and since that you're a man who works in the government and in health, so I wanted to ask you, how can we, because in the youth action statement, the government plays a huge role, so I want to know, what can we do if the government is not supporting us? How can we do it? So, thank you.
That's a fabulous question. Thank you very much.
I'd like to stand up in answering this question. First of all, I want to thank you for this question. Number one, we are relying on the various international declarations and conventions, and that has given government the strength to do what it should do. In our own case, Nigeria. What are we doing? We go ratify the conventions and declaration, develop program implementation strategy that is anchored on a mechanism that is consistent and reliable. So as it stands now, the Division of Health Promotion has a unit that is dedicated to the issue of girls' rights. And so that is an instrument for us for every monitoring undertaking. But in all of this, having been able to establish a framework, having been able to develop a mechanism that recognizes all the stakeholders so that during implementation, each group or bodies in the stake, that have stake, have their responsibility already defined by the template that is established. So a condition for mutual accountability is already created. That's what we are doing. But again, that's the role of government. At the end of the day, during the implementation, something happens. And that is the gap that we find all the time. First of all, we have to think about moving this right of the girl from the hands of government, from the hands of other people, into the hands of the girls, of the girl child. That is when you will begin to make a meaningful progress. Why am I saying this? I want to give an example. In the village where I come from, a very little village, about 11,000, very small village. There is nothing like female genital mutilation. Let me tell you why. There was an accidental intervention. Some 38 to 40 years ago, some young men left my community to live in the city of Miami. And because they were able to inspire others, others followed. So in the whole cities of the world, apart from 2 cities in Nigeria, the third, where inhabitants of my own community are more populated, is the city of Miami. Now what happened? These young men at a certain time wanted to marry. And what condition did they give? The girl must be educated. Secondly, she must have her genital part intact. What has that generated in the community? Oh, so if the female genital is mutilated, then the chances of getting married to progressive young men is blocked. Now, mothers or girls that were in town that had their genital part mutilated at that time showed regrets. Even though many of them may be married today, the truth is that they will never want to give out their daughters for genital whatever. Are you getting the point? So it means we need to, the campaign advocacy that we talk about must be directed at internalizing this very right in the girl, in the parents, first and foremost. That is what matters most.
Thank you very much.
So this is what how I want to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for that. I'd also encourage you to continue that conversation. It's a very important question, and I see a lot of heads nodding. So I would say that afterwards, please do make sure to make use of having contact with people who are in government. I would also direct you right back to Albino Francisco, because he has been having these exact conversations at the national and international level. So that I would really encourage you to continue that conversation. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time, and I wanted to close with a final comment from Margaret. I've already given you a bit of a prompter, and you'll need to put on your headphones for the answer. Number 1 is English, and number 2 is French. I just asked her very quickly just to tell us a little bit about how she communicates, because we've been talking about using media, we've been talking about talking to students here in the UK, but when in her work, where she's working in these girls' clubs, I'm just curious about how does she speak to people, what language does she use when she's dealing with people who've never ever had these conversations before?
The way I speak to my fellow women, and to tell them how they can reject child marriage and FGM. First of all, I start by telling them my history, and I explain to my fellow woman. So I tell her about my history and all the suffering I went with FGM and child marriage. Once I've explained that to her, she'll stop being scared and will be able to speak to me about it and about her experiences of FGM and child marriage. And that way where I'm able to speak to her about it. And she's able to speak to me about it as well without being worried. And if she has younger siblings or children, she can be stronger to reject FGM and child marriage. And she'll make sure that they're not subjected to FGM and child marriage as well.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to close this session out now. I'd encourage you to continue these conversations later. Thank you so much to all 6 of our panelists, not only for giving us all this information, but putting up with this incredible heat. Thank you for all of your ideas.